Hello and welcome to another edition of V Media News Read. Things are certainly hotting up in the PDP, and there doesn't seem to be an end to their crisis. Will this unending crisis be their downfall at the presidential election next year? Are we shaping up to see a two-horse race between Tinubu and Obi? Only time will tell. Let's subscribe to the channel though. Like, share, and comment on our videos as well. Let's go. Is PDP's sacrifice enough to appease Wike aggrieved members? Members and supporters of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) were hopeful that at the end of the week, peace would have been brokered among the warring members, particularly between the party's presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State. These hopes were heightened after the two men met in London weeks ago, having been at loggerheads since the party's presidential primary in May. With the same hope, many members had looked forward to the PDP's 97th National Executive Council NEC meeting and prayed that major decisions would be made to reconcile aggrieved members and bring the long-awaited and lasting peace the party needs so badly. Safe to say these hopes have been dashed as the PDP appears to still be in chaos, regardless of the resolutions made at the NEC meeting and some deliberate attempts at bringing peace, like pouring water into a basket. The crisis in the main opposition party is now forcing it to focus less on the campaigns, which begin in a few weeks, and more on appeasing aggrieved members comprising Mr. Wike and some Southern leaders who are demanding a grand sacrifice, the resignation of the party's national chairman, Iyorchia Ayu. Mr. Wike's camp gave this as the condition before it would consider whether to support Mr. Atiku's presidential bid. Mr. Wike, who made this demand on behalf of the southern zone of the country, said it is to correct the imbalance in the leadership structure of the party. He, like many other members from the South, described it as unfair to have the presidential candidate, national chairman, and chairman of the Board of Trustees and the PDP Governors Forum all from the North. Atiku's promise to make necessary consultations and revert to Mr. Wike on his camp after the London meeting, and Mr. Ayu's initial promise to step down if a fellow Northerner becomes the presidential candidate were the basis for which many members were hopeful for peace. Peace that would at least appease the governor and make him tone down his tirades. It took Atiku and PDP about 3 weeks to not necessarily meet Mr. Wike's demands, but do something. The 3 weeks were not exactly easy as he had to deal with Mr. Wike's daily tantrums about alleged enemies within the party, enemies after him, and enemies who are looking to oust the South from major positions in the party, as well as enemies who intend to loot the party's funds. As if that was not enough, Messrs. Wike and Ayu at some point had a back and forth, with the latter describing the governor and his supporters as children for calling for his resignation, and Mr. Wike, in his usual expeditious manner, responded with a challenge. During this period, Atiku would also meet with party chieftains and a few other presidential aspirants, but people like Mr. Wike and former Senate Presidents Bukola Saraki and Ayim Pius were noticeably absent. It was as though Atiku knew the demand for Mr. Ayu's resignation was not feasible. It was also like a deliberate attempt to get members of the party to send a message and somehow appeal to Mr. Wike. It has to be the only justification for Dele Momodu's epistle, wherein he addressed a letter to Mr. Wike, begging him to embrace peace and not make decisions in anger. In his epistle, Mr. Momodu also asked the PDP to look beyond the mistakes of the past and admonish Messrs. Wike, Ayu, and Atiku to rise above the war of attrition for the sake of long-suffering Nigerians who need our attention desperately. Atiku's numerous meetings also had to be the justification for Babangida Aliyu, former governor of Niger State and former information minister Jerry Gana, calling for peace in the party, as well as PDP governorship candidates visiting Mr. Wike for the same purpose. Apologies for interrupting, guys, but please Subscribe, share, like, and comment on our videos. Thank you. At Thursday's NEC meeting, Mr. Ayu did not resign, despite previous speculations that some members of the NEC were proposing a vote for the chairman to go and rumors that many members of the party wanted him gone. Walid Jibrin, the chairman of the party's BOT, was the sacrificial lamb led to the slaughter. He announced his resignation at the BOT meeting, which preceded the NEC meeting on the same day. We all want to make Atiku Abubakar become the president by all means, and that is why I sincerely decided to step down from the BOT, he told members of the BOT. I discussed this with the candidate and he agreed with me. I am sure if the party wins, I will be given a bigger position. His decision to resign was clearly not unrelated to Mr. Wike's demands. He was immediately replaced with a former Senate President, Adolphus Wabara, who would serve in an acting capacity. For Atiku and the PDP, Mr. Jibrin's resignation and Wabara's appointment into the party's leadership structure should suffice. As if to goad an already angry Wike, the NEC in a unanimous voice vote passed a vote of confidence in Mr. Ayu and commended him and the National Working Committee for their hard work and resilience. It is the second time the party would pass a vote of confidence in Mr. Ayu, despite calls for his resignation. Mr. Wike's reaction to Mr. Jibrin's resignation came less than 4 hours after it was announced, as expected. He described the move as an insult to Southern leaders in the party, but most importantly, he berated Atiku for joining the queue of people who have betrayed him. On this queue, Atiku pretty much stands behind Mr. Ayu, the Sokoto State Governor Aminu Tambuwal, and a few other unnamed enemies in the party. Mr. Wike narrated how Atiku was the first to suggest that Mr. Ayu has to go since the presidential candidate is from the north. Mr. Jibrin's resignation, the vote of confidence on Mr. Ayu, and Mr. Wike's statement have generated mixed reactions. A major question now is if Atiku and Mr. Ayu at different times said the latter would step down after the primary, what went wrong? Why is Mr. Ayu holding on to the position? Besides the fact that he was elected for a tenure of 4 years and he has only done one, as he has explained in the past. Also, why does Atiku seem so lackadaisical about doing something now? On one hand, Mr. Ayu is a key ally of Atiku. Their friendship dates back to the Third Republic, where they were members of the Social Democratic Party, SDP. They were also together in the G36 that formed the PDP. Understandably, Atiku would rather have a loyalist and a friend by his side as he campaigns and runs for the highest office in the land. On the other hand, what if Atiku really wanted Mr. Ayu gone? What if he asked Mr. Ayu to resign to correct the lopsidedness and restore peace in the party, and he, Ayu, refused? And Atiku realized another option is to appeal to Mr. Jibrin to be the sacrificial lamb, especially since he is also one of those who have criticized the lopsidedness in the party's leadership structure. Either way, whatever move the PDP thinks it has made towards appeasing Mr. Wike and his group or brokering peace is far from successful. Atiku knows this, the party knows this, which is probably why they have asked Mr. Wabara to reach out to Mr. Wike and make peace with him. The defiant Mr. Wike is still calling for Mr. Ayu's head, apparently the only acceptable sacrifice at the moment. Like it or not, Mr. Wike remains a political bride who has the attention of many suitors at the moment. He has threatened to withhold the support for Atiku in the 2023 general election if his demands are not met. Many have said he has the upper hand on the negotiation table and does not need to back down. Whether or not the governor will support the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, or that of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, two people who have tried to win him over, remains unclear. It is, however, not a risk the PDP is willing to take. Although the party's recent move spells do your worst for Mr. Wike, chances are there will be more talks. That's all the news for now, guys. Bye.